So now the dust is settled, what did this year kind of reveal to you about the core that you have and what you guys need to do to be as good as you want going forward?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it just revealed the kind of character that we have. The tough.
The sports world has always celebrated comeback stories and homecoming narratives. But what's currently unfolding in Indiana reads less like a fairy tale and more like a cautionary tale about the rapidly changing landscape of women's professional basketball. Stephanie White recently accepted the position as head coach of the Indiana Fever amid significant fanfare and optimism. Yet barely weeks into her tenure, speculation has emerged suggesting she may already be reconsidering her commitment to the organization. The source of concern isn't a traditional contract dispute or friction with front office personnel. It's something that strikes at the very heart of competitive sports. The possibility that the team she was hired to coach may not exist as promised. White's appointment initially seemed like a perfect alignment of circumstances. Here was a defensive-minded coach with a proven track record joining forces with one of the most electrifying offensive talents the sport has ever seen in Caitlin Clark. The vision was clear. Transform the Indiana Fever from a struggling franchise into an immediate championship contender. White made the calculated decision to leave her position with the Connecticut Sun, a stable organization with playoff aspirations, specifically for this opportunity in Indiana. The strategic plan was straightforward. Assemble the most talented roster in the league and compete for a championship in the first season. It was an ambitious goal, but one that seemed achievable given the pieces Indiana had assembled. However, the entire foundation of this plan rested on one critical assumption: that the roster White was hired to coach would actually be available when the season began. That assumption is now being seriously questioned, and according to insiders, the anxiety within the Fever organization has reached concerning levels. What was supposed to be a triumphant return to Indiana for White has become complicated by factors that extend far beyond the traditional boundaries of WNBA competition. The complicating factor isn't another WNBA team or even a European league offering off-season opportunities. Instead, a new entity has emerged on the basketball landscape with financial resources that dwarf what the WNBA can currently offer its players. For several months, rumors have circulated about something called Project B, a mysterious new women's basketball league in the development stages. While the organization publicly maintains its independence, numerous reports have connected its funding sources to Sela, a major events company with documented ties to Saudi Arabian interests. This isn't being structured as another overseas option where players can earn additional income during the WNBA off-season. Instead, Project B is reportedly positioning itself as direct competition to the WNBA, a rival league that could potentially challenge the WNBA's dominance in women's professional basketball. What makes this situation particularly concerning for the WNBA and its teams is the reported financial firepower behind Project B. Sources suggest the new league is preparing to offer contracts that would make current WNBA maximum salaries seem modest by comparison. We're not talking about incremental increases or slightly better compensation packages. The reported figures represent a fundamental shift in what's financially possible for elite women's basketball players. Even more troubling for the WNBA, Project B isn't targeting role players or athletes at the end of their careers looking for one final payday. Instead, they're reportedly headhunting the biggest names in women's basketball, the star players who drive attendance, television ratings, and league popularity. For a considerable time, these were just rumors and speculation. Skeptics questioned whether Project B was real or simply leveraging tactics to gain attention. However, recent developments have provided concrete evidence that this new league has both the financial backing and the ability to successfully recruit talent away from the WNBA. The situation moved from theoretical possibility to practical reality when actual signings began to materialize. The first significant domino to fall was Sophie Cunningham. The Phoenix Mercury guard has built a reputation as both a gritty competitor on the court and a marketable personality off it, making her an ideal target for a new league attempting to establish credibility and generate media attention. When reports surfaced confirming that Cunningham had officially signed with Project B, it sent reverberations throughout the women's basketball community. Cunningham's decision accomplished several things simultaneously. First, it proved that Project B wasn't merely a rumor or negotiating ploy. It was a legitimate organization with actual contracts and real money. Second, it demonstrated that players were willing to leave the established structure of the WNBA for the financial opportunities this new league represented. Third, and perhaps most importantly, It signaled that loyalty to the WNBA as an institution wasn't sufficient to prevent players from pursuing what they viewed as generational wealth opportunities. For Stephanie White and the Indiana Fever organization, Cunningham's signing was concerning, but it was also somewhat distant. After all, she played for Phoenix, not Indiana. However, Cunningham's move established a precedent and proved that WNBA players were willing to make the jump. The real crisis for Indiana came when the recruitment efforts turned inward toward their own roster. Kelsey Mitchell, the Fever's established veteran scorer and the second most important player on the roster behind Caitlin Clark, has now been connected to similar reports. Multiple sources indicate Mitchell is seriously considering or has already committed to joining Project B, following Cunningham's path to the new league. This development represents a catastrophic blow to Indiana's championship aspirations and Stephanie White's coaching plans. Mitchell wasn't just another player on the roster. She was a fundamental component of the team's offensive system. Her ability to score in isolation situations and create her own shot took significant defensive pressure off Caitlin Clark. With two elite offensive threats, opposing teams had to make difficult choices about defensive coverage and couldn't simply focus all their attention on stopping Clark. Mitchell's veteran experience also provided leadership and stability, particularly in high-pressure situations. Without Mitchell, the Fever's offensive system becomes dramatically more predictable and easier for opposing coaches to defend. The burden on Caitlin Clark increases substantially, as defensive schemes can be designed specifically to limit her effectiveness without worrying as much about other offensive threats. The balance and versatility that White envisioned when accepting the coaching position disappears. Instead of a big three with multiple scoring options and strategic flexibility, White would be left trying to build a championship contender around essentially a single star player, a far more difficult proposition in a competitive league. Stephanie White accepted her contract, believing she was inheriting a core group of talented players that could compete immediately for a championship. She expected to spend her time implementing defensive systems, developing offensive sets, and managing game situations. Instead, before she's even conducted a single official practice or held her first team meeting, she's watching the roster she was promised dissolve. The job she thought she was accepting has fundamentally changed in a matter of weeks. But even the potential loss of Mitchell, as significant as that would be, pales in comparison to the speculation currently dominating conversations throughout basketball media and fan communities. The ultimate target for Project B, the signature that would truly establish their league as a legitimate competitor to the WNBA, would obviously be Caitlin Clark herself. Clark isn't just another talented player. She's a transcendent figure who has already redefined what's possible in terms of attention and interest in women's basketball. Her college career at Iowa generated unprecedented viewership numbers. Her rookie WNBA season drove dramatic increases in attendance and television ratings. She represents the rare athlete who crosses over from sports fans to mainstream cultural awareness. Naturally, Project B would prioritize Clark above all other potential signings. And according to circulating reports, they've prepared an offer commensurate with her value and impact. The rumored figures are genuinely unprecedented in women's basketball, numbers ranging from $10 million annually to compensation packages that would rival what mid-level NBA players receive. These aren't confirmed numbers, and the exact details remain speculative, but the general principle is clear. Project B reportedly intends to offer Clark financial compensation that the WNBA simply cannot match under its current structure. If Caitlin Clark were to accept such an offer and leave the WNBA for this rival league, the implications would be staggering. For the Indiana Fever specifically, they would immediately cease being the center of the basketball universe. The national and international attention that Clark brings would follow her to whatever league she plays in. The Fever would return to being just another franchise in a struggling market, dealing with the same attendance and revenue challenges they faced before drafting Clark. All the investment, planning, and infrastructure built around Clark's presence would become essentially worthless overnight. For the WNBA as a whole, losing Clark would represent an existential threat. The league has invested heavily in promoting her as the face of women's basketball. She appears in national advertising campaigns, serves as the primary draw for nationally televised games, and has become synonymous with the WNBA's growth narrative. If she leaves, it calls into question whether the WNBA can retain any of its stars when faced with competition from organizations with significantly greater financial resources. It would also validate Project B's strategy and potentially encourage other top players to follow Clark's lead, creating a cascading effect that could seriously damage the WNBA's competitive quality and public profile. The pressure on Clark herself would be immense from multiple directions. From a purely financial perspective, the decision might seem straightforward. Accepting an offer worth several times what the WNBA can pay would provide generational wealth for her family and financial security for life. Athletes have limited earning windows, and career-ending injuries or performance decline can happen at any time. From that lens, turning down such an offer might seem financially irresponsible. However, there are also significant considerations on the other side. Clark has thrived in the WNBA system, enjoys playing against the best competition in the world, and has built relationships with teammates and within the league structure. There's also the question of legacy. Would playing in a startup league, regardless of compensation,